Welcome back to Dave's Gone By, and it is a beautiful day, not just in the neighborhood, which is what I've been saying about this program for many, many years, but also in the neighborhood. Yes, I'm going to steal that phrase from the great show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, because I actually have stolen a few moments from someone who is very, very deeply connected to that great public television show, as well as the man who invented it, Mr. Fred Rogers. We lost Fred back in 2003, but I'm very excited and very proud to have in the neighborhood today the man who played Mr. McFeely, the one and only David Newell. So, first of all, the two words you have to open with are...
Speedy delivery.
That's right. It's you. It's you. I'm so thrilled. Have you ever estimated how many times in your life you've said that phrase?
Oh boy, I try to, but I lose count. You know, I've been doing this now this is my 42nd year associated with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And so 42 times, countless. You know, just in one taping of a program, I would say it often, and then there'd be the rehearsals, and then every time I do a public appearance, I must say it. You know, every time I meet a child, I'll say Speedy Delivery. You know, it's got to be over 1 million. It really has. It's over all those years.
I was thinking about that because I was watching the movie that was made about you, the documentary called Speedy Delivery, and a lot of the documentary was taken up with your going to town fairs and to schools and to these councils where children are, and you're signing autograph after autograph, and of course, you've got to say Speedy Delivery about 1,000 times a day now.
When I'm out on the road, I do a lot of visiting public stations and their events. They have a lot of family events connected with each public station. And, you know, I meet maybe in one time. Are you still there?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, and one time I might meet, say, 400 families, and I say, and everybody, now it's to the point where I'll be at an event and I'll meet several generations. I'll meet the child who's watching, and then the mother or father, and then the grandparents, who've all had some reference to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and then I'll meet a lot of college kids who come up and say hello because they grew up with the program, and the first thing they'll say is, say it as you say it, Speedy Delivery. And I never really thought about it much, but you know how it came about in a way. Well, Fred wrote the character into the script of the first program. Mr. McFeely was in the first program, and he was a smaller part at that point. He said, I just want someone to bring in a prop when I need it, and you'll be the delivery man in the neighborhood and so forth. My other job, by the way, was behind the scenes. So I always have had two jobs in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. But the first taping, I brought in whatever I brought in, and as I left, I said, well, Speedy Delivery. And that became a greeting. It really became like hello, goodbye, just like shalom in a way. Or it has many meanings, or aloha, or something like that. I use it in various... and the other thing I do, and I sort of measure when I do it, but if there'll be a family to the line getting an autograph or something, I notice that the mother may be pregnant, and I just sort of size it up, and then they leave, and I'll say, and a special Speedy Delivery to you. And then that happens, they'll come back, maybe they've come back a year later or 2 years later with their child again, and she said, well, you wished me a Speedy Delivery, and here's the Speedy Delivery.
Oh my gosh. That's so
it's really been quite a trip working with Fred Rogers over these many years, and it's been so rewarding. And I wish I had another 42 years, and I hope I do, working on some element of his philosophy.
Well, the thing is, it's not as if you just kind of walked off the street into Pittsburgh Public Television, and Fred looked at you and said, hand me a prop. I mean, first of all, I think you met when you were doing stuff at the Pittsburgh Public Theater?
Pittsburgh Playhouse.
Pittsburgh Playhouse, I'm sorry.
Yes, I was working at the Pittsburgh Playhouse. That's where I have some background in theater, and I was working in all stage managing and acting, and I was the host of the children's theater. It's called the Pittsburgh Playhouse Junior. That's still in existence, by the way. And I was the clown. They had a clown introducing the children's plays. Now, these were plays that are the whole classic, Cinderella and
sure.
Red Riding Hood, etc. And they were done by professional actors, superbly done. And I was a student and had a chance to be the host of the play. We did 2 matinees and then 2 matinees a week, plus other plays. But that's where I began working with children, and that evolved into a mutual friend who knew Fred Rogers when they were starting the program. When Fred started the program, went national. He recommended me to Fred, and that's really the first time I met Fred. When I knew who he was because he was a legend in Pittsburgh already because he had started a program called the Children's Corner.
Oh.
So one thing led to another, and he hired me. We talked for about an hour, and he hired me right then and there.
And he hired you to do production managing, not to be on the
No, both. He told me at the time, but yes, that was what the job was for, production coordinator. I was in charge of all the props, getting the props, and making sure that the costumes were set and everything we had, because we were taping 3 shows a day because we did 130 programs that first year.
Wow.
And so that was my job. And then when we had need something, Fred said, well, I need it for this week of programs, I'll need this, this, and this. And I had to go out and get it.
Sure.
And then he said, but, instead of me bringing in a prop and showing it to the children, I'd like to break it up a little bit and have you every so often deliver what I'm going to show the children. And there would be a knock on the door. Oh, it's Mr. McFeely, and he has a delivery for us. And I'd tell him, and I'd say, well, today, and then it evolved into, we did these picture-picture films.
Oh, I love those.
Where everybody says that, and especially adults. They'll say that we'll go out to, if your listeners don't know what they are, we would go to a factory or where they make things or where they're demonstrating something and show the process of how crayons are made or how construction paper is made. And I would love those. And occasionally I'd go to the factories, but generally the photographers went and they filmed the process, and then they bring it back, they'd edit the film, and then show it to Fred and myself, and we would narrate it. It was me who had to learn all the information because, I was supposedly telling it to Fred, bringing over, say, a box of crayons and saying, well, now here's a box of 74, and here's the colors, and you want to know how they make? Well, I have this film right here, and I'll put in the picture, and we'll watch. And then I would proceed to tell Fred how they made things.
See, that was the thing for me. It wasn't even what the documentary was about itself, but it was that I studied film in film school, and I wanted to make movies, and was a big cineast in my teens and whatever. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if a little part of that really came from that moment when you walked in and you handed Fred Rogers, I guess it was a reel of 16 millimeter, maybe it was 8 millimeter film, and you just magically put it behind this little thing, and of course, I mean, it was the magic of television. It wasn't really happening, but somehow this movie would unspool, and then suddenly there'd be a movie on the screen. I think that really influenced me in some way.
Really? Well, that's good to know. So many different things people have told me that influenced them by watching The Neighborhood. We've had so many letters over the years about parents who said, or from people when they've grown up, by seeing Yo-Yo Ma on the program, I now play a cello, and I teach cello in a community college, or I'm an artist because I saw you visit an art gallery, or various things like that. And that's exactly what Fred wanted to do. He wanted to show children the potpourri of the world, so to speak, or the smorgasbord of the world. and what was available for children to be able to learn. And that's so good to hear that you were somewhat inspired by those films.
Oh, now that I think about it, I think I was also inspired by all the visits to the music store. Every time they would take out an instrument, or I'd pick up the guitar. It was it Mr. Negri, or was it? Yeah.
Negri. Handyman Negri was the handyman on the program. The irony to that is that Joe wasn't that handy, but that's what he played, Handyman Negri. But he also is a superb musician. Joe Negri is one of the best guitarists in the business, and has done a lot of work with symphonies around the country and with his own trio. He's recorded a jazz mass. He's written and recorded the jazz mass. He's a wonderful jazz guitarist. Has done a lot of recording sessions with various singers and is just a true pro. But he also is a very charming man and loves working with children. And he's still very much active in the music circles around Pittsburgh and the country.
That's great.
He just recorded with Michael Feinstein. He recorded an album of classic pop tunes with Michael Feinstein.
Oh, wow.
So he's very active and still active. And the other neighbors, Betty Aberlin, her career began as an actress in theater in New York, and she's still living in New York. And various people like that have came in, and when we were taping, and Fred would write them in, and then they'd come in, do their part, and then go back where they live. I worked full-time for the company called Family Communications. And oh, by the way,
yeah,
Family Communications has been the company's name since Fred began it. But just recently, the board of directors of our nonprofit company decided, well, in future years when we do other projects, and we're working on one now, just the beginning stages, it won't have Fred's name on it. It won't be called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So we need to have something that will say produced by, and we're calling it the Fred Rogers Company. So you're actually the first person I've told that to. It's not a secret, but we're slowly bringing out the name change. And so it'll be the Fred Rogers Company. And we're working on a animated program. It's called Daniel's Neighborhood, and Daniel Tiger, it'll be called Daniel's Neighborhood, and it'll take place mainly in the neighborhood of make-believe, and everything will be animated. Of course, each puppet will be voiced. I think McFeely will be animated, and so that's what we're working on now. So that'll say then at the end of Daniel's Neighborhood, produced by Fred Rogers Company. And PBS seems very interested in continuing the legacy of Fred's work, and it's in the works now. We're working on a pilot, and we hope in a year or a half or so we'll have it up and ready. So that's and in the meantime, the neighborhood is on PBS, but it's only on weekends. And your listeners could do this. They're going to PBS on their web, pbs.org, and you go and look for Rogers, pbs.org/Rogers. They're going to put 7 programs, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood programs, online that you can not download them, but view them. Mm-hmm. And they're going to you can vote on them. There'll be 7 programs that you'll vote for your favorite of those 7. And on March 20th, which is Fred's birthday, they'll play that program that got most votes. So every year we're trying to celebrate Fred's birthday, and we have usually the public stations around the country have a Fred Rogers or Mr. Rogers sweater drive and collect sweaters for the homeless or people in shelters. And so, and there's a Fred Rogers Center also in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which is about 60 miles east of Pittsburgh, that has a archive, and it was just newly built. It was a wonderful building, and it has the archives and all of Fred's writings, all the scripts and all the digitized programs, and it's a conference center. And on March 20th this year, they're going to have what they call Fred Forward, and it's going to be a conference of people who work in children's television and work with children, and just try to to help children in the society. It'll be beyond television. It'll be how do we help children. Speedy Delivery, this is Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, taking time out for my Speedy Deliveries to remind you you're listening to Dave's Gone By on davesgoneby.com. Speedy Delivery.
You went from being production person and also actor on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood to being the PR guy for the show.
In a way that works quite well, because I can go out to different stations and do publicity. When we were active and we were taping almost every day, Fred had very little time to do anything but be in the studio, because he did everything. He was the voice of the puppets. He manipulated. He was the host. He wrote the programs. So I started to go around to different stations just to get the word out about what we're doing. And then when people wanted to interview Fred, I would be the one they contacted. For instance, the Today Show would contact Fred about something that's happening in society in one of his comments, and could he be on the program? And so I'd react to that and try to set it up. And also instigate interviews too. If we were doing a program that I felt would be helpful for people to know about, I'd try to go to the media and say, would you be interested in interviewing Mr. Rogers, et cetera, et cetera. And that was my job, full-time job, still is really. I still talk about what we're doing and what legacies that we're carrying on and so forth. So I still have two jobs, Director of Public Relations and, I guess, Mr. McFeely.
Mr. McFeely. Actually, the one thing that I did not realize until I was looking up some stuff on this was that the last episode or official episode of the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood program aired on August 31st, 2001, which was just astonishingly 2 weeks before 9/11. I mean, I kind of wish he had been on for another month or so after that, in some kind of way. Did he go back on the air, like, shortly after?
Yes, sure. Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, he was on vacation during 9/11. He was in Massachusetts on an island, on Nantucket Island. His family has a place on Nantucket Island, and 9/11 happened, and he was stranded. He couldn't get a flight anywhere. He couldn't get back immediately that day. And of course PBS wanted him to address the situation, and so we got him back, and he did some PSAs that PBS ran in between programming, in between the children's programming and the adult programming, helped try to put in perspective for children as best you could. How do you explain 9/11?
Yeah, right.
But to children, and to anybody for that matter, but to children especially. But he knew that children would be hearing about all this and seeing the images of buildings coming down, etc. And he tried his best to be able to help. And I guess the PSAs were more really directed to adults to be able to address it with their children. But yes, he did do something along those lines. And then he was planning. He died of stomach cancer. And I think he was diagnosed, or at least seriously diagnosed. I don't know the whole beginnings of it, but I just know that in about 3 months before his death, he was doing a lot of doctor's visits, and I don't know if they really knew how serious it was. At any rate, he was to do and did on the following January 1st, and he was the Grand Marshal of the Rose Bowl Parade, along with Bill Cosby. And he did that. But it was his last public appearance, and I was with him, and he wasn't feeling very well, but Cosby really helped him. Cosby said, now, Fred, if you don't want to stand up in the car, they were an open convertible.
Yeah.
We'll sit down and wave. You just tell me when you want to sit down, and I'll help you. And he got him through it. Fred came back and told the staff that he had to do an operation, and he did. And he was in the hospital for about 3 weeks, and we thought they had stabilized. And about a week later, he began to a recurrence came, and he did not make it. But my point being, leading up to that, after he stopped the actual daily taping, he wanted to do specials. He wanted to do something on the internet. For instance, maybe doing something with bedtime stories on the internet, so parents could play them for children right before going to bed, or I'd be very interested to see what he would do now with the availability of the internet and how he could use that in positive ways. Because that's exactly what he did with television when it was in its infancy. He was home one summer or spring for college vacation, said, when I'm out of college, I'm going to go into television. And to his parents, he said, "What do you know about television? You're majoring in music." And he said, "But yes, I've seen what they show on television for children, and it's slapstick comedies all strung together with people throwing pies in each other's face. We could do better than that for children." Now, he said, there's nothing wrong with slapstick comedy, but not as a steady diet for children. We need to do better programming for young children. And that's what he did. And Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is the result.
What is the availability? You mentioned that they're going to be showing 7 episodes on PBS and having people vote, but there's couple of thousand other ones.
Yeah.
Are they on DVD? Are they going to be in syndication of some sort?
Well, we don't know yet. I know that there are DVDs out. You can get about 4 or 5 DVDs, and there are 2 programs on each DVD. They're available at fci.org, and you go to /shopping. But I know that PBS has a limited budget, and the part of the problem is the expense for the residuals, paying the musicians and paying all the actors. And it's quite sizable if you go back and re-up all of those residuals for, a year. It's a lot of programs and a lot of money. There's a website out now called Save Mr. Rogers that's been helping to get that message out to PBS to see if it's something that they could reconsider. But they are still making it available on weekends on early. That's seemingly what they can afford to do with everything else they have on television. Now, I wish they would reconsider that and show it, because there's so much in the program. The program, everything seems to be animation these days, and the Neighborhood maybe stands out as being old-fashioned, maybe, or slow. But it may be all of that, but it's still very vital. And I've always said, you don't take Tom Sawyer off the shelf because Mark Twain died. It's still a very classic story. And I think the Neighborhood is too. So we hope that we find another outlet while Daniel's Neighborhood is going on. We hope we find an outlet for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood too, in some ways.
I can't believe with all those cable channels out there that there isn't one that wouldn't run Mr. Rogers 24/7.
Yes, and take Fred's philosophy to the next generation.
I'm a little curious about your friendship with Mr. Rogers, because you worked so directly with him and you were a full-time employee, whereas even the other actors who were on the show for years were, they would come, they would go back to their homes, they would do the show. You were 5 days a week, let's say, or...
Well, it seemed like it was 24/7. I think I spent more time with Fred than did my wife.
Well,
I was there alone. We traveled a lot together because we'd go on when Fred would go out to make a speech, I would go with him. If he were going to New York City to be do the talk show circuit, I would be with him. And we became very good friends. And his wife and my wife, we'd go out to dinner maybe once a week or twice every 2 weeks or something like that. And we'd go to his home and have dinner. Fred, just to show his personality, there was a series of lectures that he bought, lectures on American American literature, starting from, Hawthorne up to Arthur Miller. And it was an hour lecture by a professor from a college on literature. And there were about 20 of them. And it would start with a very early Nathaniel Hawthorne and go through Arthur Miller. So every so often, Fred would say, well, why don't you and Nan, that's my wife's name, come over and we'll have school tonight. And we'd have dinner, and then we'd go watch a lecture on American literature. Or literature. I think maybe it was world literature. At any rate, it was quite something. And Fred loved to read. This is the genesis, I guess, of his getting that series of lectures. That was his passion. Music and reading. When we'd go to a city, he'd look up the bookstore or the local library. Bookstores were easier because they're more central to a hotel. And go in and just browse. He loved to read. And he would encourage that. He used it and encouraged it on the program, too.
Oh, of course.
He thought television, in a way, was one of the worst things we ever did for children. It really took away from their time to read. But we, going back to our friendship, he was a very close friend. He was the best correspondent, and he kept up with his high school friends. His teachers in grade school he would have notes from and write to. He was such a thoughtful person, and everybody who worked for our company, there were still about 15, 18 people, very small company. Fred would have their names or birthdays or anniversaries in his little pocket calendar, and on your birthday you would get a card or a phone call from Fred saying happy birthday or happy anniversary or happy graduation, whatever it might be. He was a very thoughtful man. It wasn't an act that you saw on television. He was such a very caring person and really thought and respected his friendships, and he respected childhood. And that's why I think the program was so successful in many ways, because I think children knew that. They couldn't articulate it, but in some way they knew the man they were seeing on television respected who they were and respected childhood. And I think that came through. Adults could see it, I think. But I don't know if children could see it on that level, but they saw something.
Was there anything that would surprise us about him? Because it's not surprising that he loved literature, certainly not surprising that he loved music, or even that he was really the same off the air as he was on. But is there a little tidbit or anecdote or any kind of thing that we would go, really, Fred Rogers like that?
Let's see. He was a vegetarian. That doesn't surprise you that much.
Okay.
And he swam an hour a day. That doesn't surprise you that much either. He had a great sense of humor. And occasionally he would tell a few off-color jokes at times.
No. Really?
Yeah, not seriously, but he would be a wonderful audience. Sometimes the crew or one of the engineers would come in and tell a off-color joke, and Fred would laugh heartily with the rest of them. He was not a prude by any means, or he was not especially a wimp by any means either. There's a lot of everybody has taken off on Fred and done a parody of Fred. Everybody. You've seen some of them, probably Eddie Murphy, and you've heard radio DJs. Everybody said, "Can you say?" You've heard all of that. And he was a good audience to be in an audience. He enjoyed good performances too. He liked to be in an audience. In fact, I think he liked being in an audience more so than being a performer. He felt sort of uncomfortable being a performer when he wasn't. That's why he was always himself on television. But when he came to the point where we did these children's concerts sometimes with the symphonies, we'd do the songs and he'd come out and do some of the puppets. He felt that he was performing then and didn't enjoy that performing aspect of when he felt that wasn't being a communicator. He felt he was performing, and he really thought of himself as a communicator.
Now you, I assume, do enjoy the performative aspects of being Mr. McFeely, of going to these places, dressing up, and in the documentary Speedy Delivery, they show you taking very great pains when you're doing the makeup, and you're doing. It wouldn't occur to me that you'd be wearing makeup. But at least the mustache, and you have the wig, and then the hat on top, and the perfectly pressed suit. Do you really love that, or is it just a way of getting the word out of other things that Family Communications and Fred Rogers Company is doing?
No, I really enjoy that. I really enjoy going out to various events. For instance, just recently, I did with the St. Xavier University outside of Chicago. I did Peter and the Wolf with their orchestra.
Oh.
As Mr. McFeely. And I would do Peter and the Wolf, and then I brought some of the puppets and showed those to the audience, and we did a few Mr. Rogers songs, and then afterwards I'd do a meet and greet. Just recently at WQED in Pittsburgh, at the public station in Pittsburgh, we had an open house, and we invited people to come in to see the set, the Neighborhood of Make-Believe set. We set it all up in the studio where it was taped, and invited people to come in to see it. And I was there meeting and greeting everybody who came in. And we thought maybe we'll have 500. Well, and 5,000.
Of course.
Up. And it was a marathon. And, I get invigorated in a way because I learned so much about what the program meant to people and the stories. I only wish I had a microphone on me to hear all these stories or record all these stories that just as you said about the film and how it inspired you somewhat, that's what I heard over and over again.
Right.
Many different aspects of the program inspired these people to be who they are today, or to take a chance and go out and study music, or go to college and I'll take up whatever they saw in Mr. Rogers.
Seriously.
That is the power of television, And Fred always said, you never know who's watching. So that's why he wanted to make the program as best as he could and use it for the good. He always said, how do you make goodness attractive? You can always put together a shoot-'em-up movie and with a lot of action and violence and color and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's an artistic endeavor too. But that's easier to sell. But how do you make goodness attractive? And I think Fred did it. He did make it attractive. But you don't have to be violent to make money with a product. You can get an audience without being violent all the time. I mean, that's part of life. Yes, he wasn't denying that. But he was just trying to make a point of, let's use television the best way we can. And Fred was never in the clouds. He always knew there was a real world out there, and he wanted to show the best to the children and protect them in a way from what's out there, and prepare them, I guess is the best word. If you know what's coming up, you'll be able to handle it better. He always said that whatever's mentionable is manageable.
Wow. Okay.
And so, Fred was quite something. I don't know if your listeners, a lot of people think that the program is a nice little kiddie show, but he was quite a very intelligent man, very intelligent. And what you didn't know about him, on television you saw the serious side of Fred, but he did have that wonderful sense of humor that I think people would be surprised to know about. And occasionally a little off, he'd laugh at an off-color joke as hearty as the other guy would. If it was a very good off-color joke,
right?
Not something just raw, but something that had some wit to it, I guess. And, he liked David Letterman. He thought David Letterman was very whimsical when he first started out. He thought he was funny, and you wouldn't think that. And so there are people like that
he probably liked Steve Allen as well, I'll bet.
Yeah, he did, and likewise, Steve Allen, and in fact, Steve Allen's wife and Steve Allen's son gave an award to Fred. He has Steve Allen's name, a humanitarian award in his name, and they presented it to Fred. I, in fact, picked it up. Fred was taping, so I had to go to pick up the award. So, yes, he did like Steve Allen.
We're finishing our conversation, our delightful conversation in the neighborhood here with a man from the real neighborhood, David Newell, better known, of course, as Mr. McFeely. Is there one defining memory or moment that you particularly cherish of your relationship with Fred?
Oh, there's so many. I'll do two quick ones.
Sure.
One was a guest we had whose name is Margaret Hamilton. She's the Wicked Witch of the West.
Sure.
And we had her on because a lot of that movie scared a lot of people, and to this day people say, boy, that really helped me when I saw that the witch was an actress and it wasn't a real witch and real scary. And so we had her on the program to come in as Margaret Hamilton, the actress, and tell children that's her job. She was an actress and she played this witch, but she's not a mean person. She was just telling a story. And she became a good friend, and every weekend she would call us and my wife and I, and we became good friends. And she said, just call me Maggie, Aunt Maggie. And I cherish those moments with Margaret Hamilton. She's a lovely, lovely woman and a true pro. And the other is the very last taping we did, I sang the Speedy Delivery song with Fred, and then I exited. But usually I would sing the song and say, well, see you around the neighborhood. But on the very last program, I sang the song and then just shook his hand, and no one would know that I did it purposely because I wanted to, that was my signal that thank you very much for the many years, thank you for your friendship, thank you. It was just loads of thanks in that one handshake. And so I cherished that moment, and it came sort of to me as I was standing there, we were taping, and it came in my head, I think, I've got to do something before I leave. What? And I shook his hand, something that simple and that natural is a cherished moment for me, and that's on tape, so I have that forever.
That's right. And it's a thrill that we have so much on tape, so much forever of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and of course your part in it as Mr. McFeely, which the one last thing that we forgot to even mention was that the character was initially going to be called Mr. McCurdy.
That's right. Mr. McCurdy was the president of the Sears Roebuck Foundation, the people who gave us the money for 25 years to do Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And Fred wanted to thank him. So he called the delivery man, Mr. McCurdy, and about 20 minutes before we were going to tape, the phone rang. It was Sears, and it was Mr. McCurdy. He said, we love everything you're doing. We like the scripts. Everything's fine, but please don't call the delivery man McCurdy. It looks a little self-serving. So maybe you should think up another name. And Fred said, well, we will do that. And hung up the phone, and so we've got to get you a name. We were taping in 20 minutes. McFeely, because Fred's name is Fred McFeely Rogers.
Right.
That's the real Mr. McFeely was Fred's grandfather. And so I guess I'm carrying on the name McFeely, too.
So to carry on that kind of legacy in so many ways, I'm sure you do feel honored and very special and blessed about that.
You know, as I told you earlier, or I might have told you earlier, I thought I had a job for 1 year when Fred hired me. I thought, okay, we'll do 130 programs, but then I'll move on. I'll move back to Los Angeles where I was living. And here I am 40-some years later and still delivering, really. I'm doing I'm doing an appearance next week at the local children's museum, and I'm traveling to a college in February to show the Speedy Delivery movie and meet with students who grew up with the program. So now there's two audiences in a way: the college kids who we show the program to and they remember, and then I do Q&A afterwards, and then still to these events where children and families come to. So it's been a real wonderful, and I look forward to these appearances. I look forward to meeting people who grew up in the program and hearing their stories. So it's been very rewarding.
Well, it has been such a reward for us to have you, David Newell, in the neighborhood. Please, please, as we go, say it one more time.
Okay, well, speedy delivery.